Dragon Ball Z. Where do I even start? Okay, look, Dragon Ball is probably the most recognizable anime franchise in the United States. Well, next to Pokemon, of course. Dragon Ball was definitely one of those properties that defined the generation that grew up in the late 90s and early 2000s. The series was captivating. The over-the-top fights, the crazy techniques, the screaming. The show was the definition of testosterone and adrenaline, but we loved it. Personally speaking, I'm a huge Dragon Ball fan. I've seen all the movies, watched all 4 anime series, and even collected the manga at some point. So yeah, I'm a fan. So of course, with every mega successful franchise, we must have video games to accompany the success, and that's where I come in. Growing up, I played many of the Dragon Ball titles. The first game I remember playing was Legendary Super Warriors for the Game Boy Color, a turn-based strategy game out of all things, but I remember really liking this game as a kid, and even beating it multiple times. Of course, I eventually got my hands on the games like Legacy of Goku Trilogy, the Budokai Trilogy, and even the Tenkaichi series. I have some very fond memories of playing these titles with friends, and I honestly consider most of these games great. Of course, Dragon Ball had its fair share of terrible games as well, but luckily I was able to avoid most of those. Once the 7th generation of consoles came around, I pretty much stopped caring about the video game releases. At that time, the anime was over, Super wasn't a thing yet, so yeah, I saw everything that was needed to see. The games released during this time, I don't know, they just didn't capture my attention like the previous generation. It seemed like we were just playing the same game with updated graphics. I heard decent things about the Burst Limit series, but never caught my attention. So fast forward to 2014, we saw a new Dragon Ball game that was being released for the PS4 and Xbox One called Xenoverse. This game caught my attention because it was introducing elements we haven't seen in other Dragon Ball games prior. Custom character creation, custom move sets, and a seemingly engaging online community. Okay, now you have my attention. I spent many hours grinding in Xenoverse and its sequel Xenoverse 2. Fun times. I know many of these elements were inspired by the unreleased MMO Dragon Ball Online. We even had Dragon Ball FighterZ, which many consider the best fighting game ever, so it was safe to say Dragon Ball was having a resurgence in the video game space. So now with my interest back in the Dragon Ball games, we heard rumors of an open world Dragon Ball RPG, which is something I've always wanted since I was a kid. Well, come to find out, that game is called Kakarot, and well, let's see if the game was worth the hype and wait. So starting with the story, I'll say this now, if you watch the anime like me and millions of others, you know the story like the back of your hand. This game explores each saga from the anime, so you start the game in the Saiyan saga being introduced to Goku's family and the warrior race called Saiyans, and you end at the Buu saga. If this is your first time exploring the story of Dragon Ball Z, this is a great way to experience that, but I still recommend everyone watch the anime regardless. Personally, I ended up fast forwarding and skipping many of the cutscenes because, well, I've seen the story a million times, and the added dialogue didn't really add much for me. If you're a Dragon Ball fan, there's no need to sit through these stories for the millionth time. Now jumping to the gameplay, this game plays like a refined version of Xenoverse. During my first hour or so with the game, I did not like the controls at all, but as I continued with the story and explored more, I really started to enjoy how this game handled. Give it some time, you'll get used to it. You spend a great percentage of the game exploring different areas from the Dragon Ball universe. I really enjoy flying around these areas. The sense of speed you get from the flying is fantastic, and this is definitely the best flight controls in any Dragon Ball title. Super smooth. Around each of the hub worlds, you have different things that you can do. You can take on a couple side quests from different characters around. You can hunt and fish for food, which you can use to boost your base stats for that given character. You can collect these Z orbs, which can be used to increase the power of techniques you already know, or you can learn some new moves by doing challenges and training spots. Admittedly, collecting the Z orbs can be pretty addicting considering how fast you move throughout the world, but the side quests are somewhat repetitive, and after a while, I didn't really care to do them. Even though I really enjoyed the Goku driving minigame. Maybe a Dragon Ball themed kart racer wouldn't be a bad idea after all. In terms of this so-called open world, don't go into this game expecting Breath of the Wild or Horizon Zero Dawn. This game is open to an extent, but they are still sectioned off and you have to use a world map to access different parts of the world. There is no seamless transition from area to area, and some of these load times can definitely break the immersion. I will admit, I love how these areas look, but I wish it was a truly open experience. The battles in this game are simply beautiful. I love how the key attacks look, I love how the camera pans to really highlight the action on screen, and the sounds are spot on. The game control is very similar to Xenoverse, but I think I prefer this over Xeno in terms of control. You really feel like you're playing the anime. This has to be the most accurate representation of a Dragon Ball fight. Some of these bosses can really give you a hard time. I had the hardest time with Android 20. He just has some very annoying attack patterns. Character progression is handled through gaining experience from fighting bosses and random encounters, eating meals prepared by Chi-Chi or others, and using Z-orbs to flesh out your skill tree for each of the characters. You also have this element called community boards and a gifting system. I appreciate them trying to add some depth to the leveling system and stat boosting, but I felt this was not really needed, and I don't really feel compelled to do any of the community board stuff, but it's there for those who want it. Overall, Dragon Ball Kakarot is a fun experience. Despite being another retelling of a story we know, even though I had fun with this title, there are some areas of opportunity. One, I didn't like that they skipped over some of the story elements that would have made for fun gameplay experiences. The first example that comes to mind is Goku on Snake Road. As well as this game controls in the hub world and how fast you can move, this would have been perfect to play through. I also felt they missed the mark with the game being open world. The worlds themselves look good, but I hate the fact that I can't fly around like one giant sandbox without having to fly to a world map. Pick a stage and see a long loading screen. Do I recommend this title? Well, that depends. If you're a die-hard Dragon Ball fan, chances are you already own this. But for those who are still on the fence about it, the game will give you a fun experience. But at the current state of the game, I would not pay full price just yet. I think this game has a ton of potential, so with the added content on the way and future updates, this game has a chance to be something great. But right now, give it some time. Alright guys, well that's going to wrap up the Dragon Ball Kakarot review. Like I stated in my review, I feel like this title has a lot of potential. I know there's DLC coming on the way. The Season Pass is already on PSN and Xbox Live. So if you guys want to check out the DLC or just go ahead and pay for it in advance, make sure you guys pick up the Season Pass. I believe it's going for about $25. So, you know guys, if you really enjoyed the base game and you want to see how they're going to expand on this, definitely pick up the DLC. I'm looking forward to seeing what they're going to add, whether they're going to add movie characters or GT stuff, or even go back into the original Dragon Ball series. So it's going to be cool. I'm looking forward to it. But without further ado, guys, thank you so much for watching this review, and I hope you guys have a wonderful night. Peace.